Welcome to another episode of Catalyzing Radical Systemic Change, where in my own language it's all about discovering, mapping, and cross pollinating the various building blocks towards a planetary civilization ahead. What do I mean with a planetary civilization? Well, bluntly put, you may have heard about the terminology of the Anthropocene. So, we as the dominant species, we humans, have shaped the whole planet that we ultimately inhabit. And in my understanding, we're on the cusp of birthing a planetary civilization where we become aware as the dominant species that ultimately our transition is to become aware that we are shepherding this beautiful marble in space for all sentient beings that are part of this large ecosystem. The topic today, usually I already know what kind of headline I give it, but this one is more of a meta reflection. It's a conversation about leadership, self-transformation, cultural transformation, and systemic transformation in the context of birthing this planetary civilization together. It's my utmost pleasure, and I'm super grateful to be in this virtual room connected in between Guatemala and Canada with Satyen Raja, whom I personally met only a couple of weeks ago at Frequency, which was a gathering of impact entrepreneurs and family offices. And we really had a very deep resonance from the get-go. And before I hand over to Satyen to ask him about his pivotal moments in his biography and really sense into that human being, what made him the creature that he is, in my own words, I would describe him as a somewhat a master and a beautiful integration of the masculine and the feminine, and in his own language, the warrior and the sage. Satyen, it's my great pleasure to be in this virtual room together with you and record that funky podcast. So, just that you know, it's kind of a pattern in my podcast before we dive into the topics to really give the people a felt sense of the full human being. Since you have a very complex biography, I don't mind how many touch points you choose, but when I ask about the pivotal moments is, you know, at the moment when we die or we write an autobiography, we will always pick this maybe 3 or 4 or 5 pivotal moments in our biography where we were waking up or we were devastated or there was a deep change in our lives. So having said all of that as a entry to the podcast, Satyen, the floor is yours, and I'm super curious to listen into the pivotal moments in your biography.
Thank you for a beautiful introduction here, Alistair. Well, first of all, I also had a wonderful and powerful time aligning with you, finding our commonality, our spiritual backgrounds, our understanding in business. And so very grateful to be here today. Thank you, brother. So I born of an Indian family in Africa, Uganda, raised there just a little bit, then moved to England, fleeing the Idi Amin situation, and then came to Canada when I was 7 with my family. So immigrant family, father's side are all entrepreneurs going back generations. Mother's side is Gandhi family, so very involved with social service, helping humanity. And so my life has become an integration of those particular energetics, those paths, those karmas, those dharmas. And when I was young, I didn't really feel part of this world. I felt like this world is an illusion. And I didn't have words for it as a youngster, but I felt no one is real. What's going on? And I brought it to my parents. They didn't know really how to deal with this. And then I was watching TV as a kid and watching Kung Fu shows. And when I saw the first few Kung Fu movies and the TV show Kung Fu, and I saw Bruce Lee and all these things, I had a huge awakening. I had a past life full regression. I had an experience where I saw myself in the temple, Shaolin temple, and that was my path, my life. And I didn't know how I ended up in this world. And so I brought it to my parents. I said, Mom, Dad, I don't belong here. I would need to find my Kung Fu master. And poor parents didn't know what to say, how to deal with it. But they encouraged, I was blessed. They encouraged me to follow my spiritual callings. They were traditional Hindu parents, but they didn't say, hey, you must be Hindu. When I asked them about God, philosophy, spiritual life, they said, son, we're simple. We're your mother and father. We've learned this through tradition. If you want to know about God, you have to ask those who know about God. Priests, mullahs, people who are realized. Go out in the world, ask people, and then you'll find your own path to God. And I was, in a way, upset because I'm like, I want the answer. And I didn't realize what a blessing they were to not indoctrinate me, not put an overlay on something that I had to outgrow. They set me free. And for that, I'm ever blessed. So my life has been on that, since that moment on, a search for truth, self-realization, awakening. And I've traversed the world for 40 years, 45 years now, studying with the masters in many dimensions, from martial arts, warriorship, to tantra, sacred relationship and sacred sexuality, to all the dimensions of shamanism, plant medicine for 35 years, all the way to reality creation, understanding what are the metaphysics, the dynamics of this incredible universe, and how do we align with them in the way of the Tao, in the way of non-resistance and working with existence. And then the core of it has been self-realization. And so self-realization, I came into that path through enlightenment intensives. One of my mentors introduced me to the Zen Koan path, where we're not taking on doctrines, we're in fact dissolving doctrines, dissolving the mind, eradicating it until our truth emerges. So I've been on this quest all my life, and I continue to be on this quest. I don't believe there's any arrival, and I'm blessed to have my wife, since I met in high school, Suzanne, join me through this journey. And I have two wonderful adult children, Shaman and Satori, who are our pride and joy. And, my background also then led me into many businesses, right from young, from running martial arts schools. I became a franchisee of hypnotherapy centers across Canada. And I've been an advisor, a mentor, a guide to many prominent business leaders in the world. But the core is, I love to help people awaken the warrior within them, the aspect within them that never says die, that is connected to spirit, connected to valor, honor, integrity, the higher noble principles of humanity. And the sage, for me, is that which is resting in the already profound knowingness, the isness of existence, the God realm within, and learning to touch that, express that, awaken that. So that's been my journey in a nutshell. We can go deeper if you'd like.
Well, we will certainly go way deeper. This is a very as deep as the rabbit hole goes conversations. So let's unpack a couple of the patterns. So I think the immediate deep felt sense of coherence and mutual recognition comes from a fact that we share a couple of puzzle pieces in common. You're older, you're more accomplished, you have achieved more mastery, but maybe to disentangle and then reassemble first, let's say, the way of the spirit to awaken spirit and body work. Because in my own biography, it was kind of odd. I started both Taekwondo and ballet at the same time. But as some of the listeners know, I've mainly been focusing on a very classical path of ballet, and then later on stacked yoga and tantra and other bodywork modalities on top of that. So from an integral perspective, without giving the whole full shebang of Ken Wilber, I think we have various lines of development. And what I find very interesting is when I see people that have only pursued one path, let's say they're meditating for 25 years, they're really on the cushion, they're very devoted to their meditative practice in whatever lineage. Could be in a Hindu lineage, could be in a Zen Buddhist lineage, could be Christian contemplation, could be whatever, but they have not yet trained their, let's say, gross vehicle, the physical body. So let's get a little bit creative. Like, why do you think, and from your thousands, if not tens of thousands of mentees and clients, where do you see this an important piece to integrate, let's say, modalities of body work in the broadest sense and the path of awakening, and why?
Really great question. When I was young, Bruce Lee was a major a major inspiration for me. And he said, absorb what's useful, discard what's not. I'm paraphrasing, and come up with your own creations. And that really led me to test my Kung Fu and many other modalities. I wanted to test, does it really work? Is this just something coming from tradition? Or does it have actuality and substance today? And I found out, unfortunately, a lot of the metaphysical ideas and trainings and developments, they were, if you will, old crusted caricatures of what truth is. They were truths years ago, but they formed around a crusted way of being and then became, that's the law. And unfortunately, we don't grow that way. Life is always blooming. Life is always growing. We got to be fresh. So I've been on this pursuit to continually test these realities for their efficacy in life. We're a whole being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. So yes, I dove deep into Kung Fu, and I got deep into that since I was 12. And around 17, my master said, it's time for you to learn the healing arts. Because you're learning the yang arts, you're learning how to kill, warriorship, these particular very intense realms, but you also need to learn how to heal. So I initiated in shiatsu therapy, acupuncture, Chinese herbal medicine. That started at 17. And by 19, I had a clinic in the daytime and teaching martial arts in the evening. And in the clinic, I was able to meet so many other practitioners in so many realms. And I realized there is no absolute one way to grow ourselves as a human, to grow ourselves as a society. This is religious doctrine. This is some type of narrow mindset. So I truly believe in the power of cross-training. Even today, I train in multiple martial arts. I have multiple guides, mentors, advisors to make sure that I'm filling out certain dimensions in my being. And I think it's imperative as leaders today that we don't isolate ourselves in our own knowingness and our own mastery. It's imperative. The I Ching, Book of Wisdom from China, thousands of years old, it says the superior man, the leader, the superior king, queen, deludes themselves, topples, when they only surround themselves with yes men. And they don't seek advice out of those who can point fingers at them, expose their shadows, illuminate their light. And so I've been surrounding myself with masters, with brilliant seers from the feminine dimension and the masculine dimension. I have very powerful female guides who've been with me 40 years, one of my mentors, Anjali. And I've had the equivalent, very powerful man, warrior, man of principle and truth, Lawrence Noyes, and many others. I think it's essential in this day and age that we don't succumb to our own prominence as a leader. We don't succumb to our own success as a leader. These are catapults to deeper awakening. If we look at the hierarchy of needs of Maslow, the highest ones are self-actualization, self-realization, and ultimately service to the whole. This is the ascent that we all go through the chakras, through our evolution. And those who feel that they've arrived are the ones that are going to get toppled the fastest. My Kung Fu master said to me, Satyen, it's better to be humble all the time than to be humiliated all at once. So I've used that as a benchmark, a hallmark to stay clean on the path. And I believe we all can do that, especially as we rise in our leadership and potency and influence in the world.
Amazing. Again, disentangle and reassemble. You were using the word cross-training. So I don't mind if you take real clients or we aim as prototypically creating in the next chapter a couple of avatars out there. So give a couple of examples from my side. Like I said, this is more of a creative conversation than many of my more type interview podcasts. And I give you one. So I never did psychedelics or the sacred testament of plant medicine up until my early 30s, mainly because I had an early childhood accident. I was carrying what you call a shock trauma, luckily not a developmental trauma. And I needed like years to, let's say, unpack that up until I had, so to say, the stamina and the inner will to break through my own barriers using psychedelics. So the example that I want to sketch, and I've literally never mentioned that in a podcast, but that I often see is two archetypes. There's those archetypes who only jump on psychedelics way too much, way too often, but they don't have a dedicated, lineage-based monastic tradition and the devotion to a true master, to follow this guide for, let's say, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, not only 2 years. And they constantly jump to achieve that state of oneness, unity consciousness, bliss, whatever you want to call it, these extraordinary states of consciousness, and kind of abusing the sacred sacraments of plant medicine. So I would say that's one avatar. And I usually tell those people, sweethearts, you will never get rid of your urge to continue to do the next ceremony and the next ceremony and the next ceremony if you don't have a dedicated path to train and evolve your way to loosen your grip of the ordinary mind through, for example, a meditative, devoted practice. So the other avatar, which was the avatar that got me interested in going into plant medicine, were people that felt a little bit, let's say, a little bit stiff because they were sitting on a meditation cushion and they were like, for example, a Zen Buddhist master. So the very first guy that I met, who was a full Zen Buddhist master, he was short before his 50th birthday. He said, I don't know why, but I feel called to go into the rabbit hole of plant medicine. And then over the course of only like 2 years, and I was very close because he lived in my university town, but he had this like rather stiff monastic Zen Buddhist practice, koan practice, like all of that. And he had never done psychedelics. And I saw him like loosening and a deeper sense of integration and a deeper interest in something beyond the monastic practice that suddenly got me interested. This was maybe 8 years before I even tried psychedelics myself. So anyhow, there's these two avatars. Some are heavy on the plant medicine side. They need a daily practice. And those who have a daily meditative practice and who have just been too afraid or it has been a taboo in their circles. So I wonder, you can either riff off of these two archetypes or sketch some other ones, because there are many, like, I think, different avatars that we can help those to get inspired to integrate on a deeper level within themselves.
I'm really glad that you've asked this. This is a very valuable topic to illuminate for us leaders. So thank you, Alistair. First of all, plant medicines are meant to be used in the context of a sangha. Sangha means a spiritual circle, a circle of fellows who see you, strengthen you, wisen you. You can let go in, you can get strength from, you can share your darkness, you can share your light, and you're growing together. The idea of a sangha, a community of fellow practitioners, fellow spiritual seekers, and spiritual finders. You see, we find things in these plant medicines, and if we just don't apply them in the context of the rigor of a community that says, hold on a sec, what have you realized? What wisdom have you gained? Now, where are you now? And what's the context of you living those wisdoms that you've gained? Are you 2 out of 10, 7 out of 10 in the living of those wisdoms, 10 out of 10? Then rather than doing another 5, 6, 7 plant medicines, live what you've learned. Live the wisdom. These plant medicines are sacred gifts from Mother Earth, from Gaia, the portal of the divine Gaia. When she's giving you insight, wisdom's transmissions, we piss on her and shit on her when we don't live it. Then we just drink of her as another intoxication to escape from the harshness of reality. These medicines are meant not to escape from the harshness of reality, but to cope, harmonize, synergize, to become more potent in the navigation of life's experience, from love to business to sex, to raising children, to being in community, to being a whole human. This is imperative. Then you have those who are on the deep meditative sides, which as I was for many years. I started in very intense Zen meditative koan immersives. We're talking Zen sessions that were so intense, people are screaming to get out of it like within few hours. Not only did I sit on many of those, I was involved in over 100 over 30 years. And giving, sitting, having tens of thousands of students doing meditation with us. What I came to realize is that path of illumination without medicine gives you the direct experience of your true nature. Who am I? The divine self that transcends all duality, that transcends the temporal, that is non-located. that is non-dimensional, the isness of being. That's what these meditative, if you will, enlightenment methods produce. They bring someone home to their true self. That is a foundation, not the exalted last effect. That is the foundation I came to recognize for true, deep spiritual growth, not just flitting around the worlds of phenomena. And that's very powerful in the realm of meditation. It seeks to help you disengage, dissolve, and let go of phenomena, lights, bells, psychic phenomena, all these downloads that we hear about nowadays with the youth. And all these are phenomena. Phenomena is not truth. They're bamboozling us to think it's truth, but it's not. So these meditative processes from Zen, yoga, you name it, they help us awaken to truth. Now, once you have that, I am this. This is the nature of life. Now, how do we navigate life? This is where plant medicines can come very powerfully in. As you shared, in the context of great leadership, someone who's masterful, those who are masterful in holding the space safe and allowing you to open in a very clear, direct way without their fancy shamanism taking over the experience and their regalia taking over the experience. You don't need any of that. It's all bullshit. What the plant medicines reveal to us is the multidimensionality of the true self. The true self is recognized through meditation and enlightenment, and then the multidimensional universe within, without, those distinctions fall away, are what plant medicines reveal, the hidden corners of all existence. We get to traverse and play and experience realms, portals, dimensions that expand us from this temporal viewpoint. Now, we must come back from the high. You go to the peak, as the old story says, you remember the world as it looked like from the peak, but that scent, that wisdom, that knowingness, we must come down to the ground, the valley, and then say, honestly, am I in congruence with what I have discovered? And that's the real work, whether it's meditation, whether it's plant medicine, or any form of spirituality. We're in an era now where it's not more that we need to learn. We need to apply, live, ground what we already know, and move from victim seekerhood or weakened seekerhood, unless you truly are a seeker, to those who have found, lived, integrate, and move the world forward in a very powerful way.
So what I really love about you is this fierceness. I want to mention something that I truly think is an ingredient often overlooked, especially from the plant medicine heavy folks, is the Sangha. So there's a saying which says the new Buddha is the Sangha. So I will paraphrase before I hand over. You were mentioning the context of community, and the Sanskrit word for that is Sangha. And the accountability, what it means that if you had your peak experience and you had a couple of exits or whatever, so you have amassed a lot of self-mastery and the power, but ultimately it comes down to the other and the others holding you accountable for how many or how much of the realization that you think you have grokked, you really land in everyday mundane reality. How do you raise your children? How do you treat the people in your companies? Where do you invest into? Are you really that lighthouse who lives up to the principles that you think you have mastered? So, since you're older and you're a couple of decades longer into that divine play of Leela here on the planet, I wonder, why do you think the Sangha is so important? What different aspects in the Sangha have been critical? For me, it's usually sex, money, and power, right? It's the big three hidden taboos: sex, money, and power in a
Yes.
Sangha. And why do you think a Sangha is so important when it comes to holding, especially the more and most powerful creatures on this planet that show up as leaders, hold them accountable in the context of a Sangha?
Because we're all full of shit. And we're all full of grace and godness. We're all full of demons, and we're full of angels. The Sangha, the spiritual community, I started very early. My Kung Fu school was my Sangha. The fellow students, my teachers, and we held each other not only accountable to our shadow, which is what a lot of people think is what the Sangha is about, or the spiritual community, so we can reflect, and that's very important, and I'll get to that. Also, what's important is holding each other to our magnificence. You're better than that. You shouldn't be doing that bullshit with your wife. You shouldn't be doing that. You should need to spend more time with your family. What are you doing? You just made a few $1,000,000 and you're out again on the road? Take the time, invest with your wife and your family. Bring them back home to your heart. Go splurge for 3 months. You don't need to work anymore. These type of things can come from the Sangha, to hold each other in magnificence. Once we've experienced the magnificence and someone sees yours, you see mine, I see yours. That's why we have that beautiful bond. And we get to flourish, nourish each other's magnificence, and we get to illuminate and support each other's weaknesses in any areas that we need to strengthen. You have brilliances and strengths far beyond me. I have my experience beyond you. We can share in this community. We can receive, we can be an open vessel to receive the multiple wisdom. You know, one of the things in my Tantra Sangha, we get reflections on our sexuality as a man. I get other brothers who tell me, okay, what degree do they feel my presence? What degree do they feel my claim in the world? What degree do they feel my penetration of spirit and my gift in the world? And they'll say, brother, you're doing great. 7 out of 10. This is what you're doing great in the world. And they'll praise me, and I'll do the same with them. But then they'll say, hey, to get to a 10, show the world more of this. So it's not just loosey-goosey. We give praise, acknowledgement for the growth, the impact, the expansion we are making, and we get our brothers and sisters who care about us to say, okay, see this area, tweak it a little bit more. That way we're in a continuous evolutionary cycle. We're moving higher and higher with no arrival. This is the power of that. I've had that since I've been a child, and I'll tell you something. It's shifted my life. I don't even know what I would be without it. I'd probably be I don't know where I would be without it. All right. So I think this is an underplayed area. Why? Especially those of us who are business leaders. We're badass. We're strong. We have our own brilliance. Why the hell do we need all types of people around us to do this? Why do we need peers who can see us? You don't. You don't need it at all. But if you want it and you're hearing the wisdom of what we're saying, then your evolution, your expansion will just go through the roof by having the humility to receive and the heart to share the good, bad, ugly, indifferent, and amazingness in your fellow leaders. You know, we just came from this very powerful frequency gathering. And the leaders that had gathered, we had shared these type of experiences. We did practices and drills to illuminate each other's presence. We shared where there's shadows and how we can grow them. And we shared what we can do to become even more potent with each other. You can be even more potent this way. Tone this down, tone that up. Ah, you release this, brother. Ah, sister, claim that. This is the beauty of leadership in this day and age. We stand strong in our sovereignty, and we hold in embrace our fellow humans, that we get to co-share love and grow together. If not, it's a damn lonely path. It becomes very lonely at the top. Trust me.
Let's stay there, because truth be told, it gets very lonely at the top. And I think the mutual recognition in the context of Sangha, in the context of our two biographies meeting and sensing both into our relationship and what we may want to birth together, has a lot to do with a non-local, global, felt sense of Sangha, yet many of those are still stuck in one paradigm, one vertical, just entrepreneurs meeting entrepreneurs, investors meeting investors, spiritual warriors working with spiritual warriors. So there's something unique in between both of our ecosystems, meaning the sum total of all the relationships, the paradigms, and the ontologies we're holding, and that we've given like all of our life force to birth, to sense each other. So I give you a little bit my context. So as many of the listeners know, I've been basically devoting my whole life into two pillars, I always say in my biography. One of which is a trained macroeconomist, so very macro guy that basically, because my father was founding member of the German Green Party, grew up with the systemic question. So ultimately really questioning everything out there that is infrastructure, like the banking system, the monetary systems, how society is built up, the incentive structures of, in my language, like late stage capitalism, right? A very extractive nature that we created a system that by and large tries to externalize all of the costs it's producing to the less dominant species, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and the future generation. So that's the macroeconomist. And the other one is the mystic, right? Because much like you, I've said decades, less decades than you, but still a couple of decades, with enlightened masters and shamans and tantra teachers and body workers and trauma therapists. So in the context of the Sangha that I think is somewhat out there, but many of them are still stuck into, I would say, a rather narrow vertical. And it's usually too many of the same brew, right? Like I said, it's usually family offices with family offices, plant medicine, people with plant medicine people, the monastic traditions. So I wonder, let's stay a short moment with the context of the Sangha, because the ecosystem you build covers a big variety of people you have touched over the last decades. So do you have any idea what could be a vector, an attractor to gather the global Sangha, and maybe share that in the context of you're closing if I remember rightly, so a 13-year chapter, and you want to birth something new. So what's the Sangha that you imagine that can be very powerful in the context of personal transformation, cultural transformation, and systemic change?
Beautiful, Alistair. I'm really enjoying your deeper inquiry here. I've been leading a CEO dojo of very powerful business leaders, founders, who are all on the spiritual path of awakening, but are badass in business, inventors, scientists, tech masters, you name it, many industrialists. What's unique about all of us is we have a desire for continuous growth in our businesses, growth in our relationships. I call these the freedoms: faith, our spiritual attunement; family, our family dynamics, making them whole and joyful and filled with love; finance, not just the money aspect of earning, but earning, saving, spending, investing at a psycho-spiritual dimension so that we're whole within. Fitness, vitality, fitness of mind, body, and spirit is essential. And then fun. I call these the freedoms. Why? Because many of us entrepreneurs, we put so much dedication into our businesses and our growth, and sometimes we make fun in our enjoyment the last thing. And so we've been holding each other to these freedoms so that we hold each other powerfully. On our own, can we do it? But together with the various forms of insight, reflection, tech masters, masters in technology, masters in psycho-spiritual development, masters in relationship, so many different types, and we get to infuse each other. The reason we don't do that, and one of my, as yours is a pet peeve, is staying only in one clique. You become incestuously bouncing off in this chamber of mirrors, reflecting back only the same thing. There's no challenge. To surround yourself with others outside of just your narrow bandwidth of capacity and interest, that's humility. And that puts you in danger and puts you out of the comfort zone. So I like to make sure I'm not in my comfort zone. I'm at my edge. The warrior, the sage, the true leader grows at their edge. If you're not at your edge, you're dying. And what I mean by edge is like, wow, this is getting real. This is real. And I want to be in that real spot where the life force is awakened. There's an edge of life. There's an electricity coursing. A lot of leaders have lost that edge and succumb to the comforts of the circles they already know, where they're just, clanging, bowls and crystals and doing sound breath ceremonies and whatever, whatever you're doing. But they're just doing more and more and more of what I would call spiritual parlorism, spiritual Disney play. It's like going to amusement. Oh, I'm going to do the breathwork amusement. Now I'm going to do the plant medicine amusement experience. Now I'm going to do whatever. When we move beyond the amusement and we tune into what must I do to live, love, and die complete without regret. That's the power of the ultimate circle of influence and power. What must I do to live, love, and die complete without regret? Now, that's the biggest question and the biggest purpose in the way we're meant to live life, I believe, as leaders. And if we answer that question truly, it'll continue to evolve. But if we don't ask that question and we're not held in a circle to ask a similar type of question, then we'll default to comfort. The ego hates being at the edge. The ego hates taken into the psycho-spiritual dimensions where vulnerability, openness, and true embodiment of the knowingness is expressed. The ego doesn't want it. The ego wants more fanfare, more experiences, more experiences, more experiences, rather than carving a path of truth. And so I believe it's essential to humble ourselves, to be at our edge, to have friends, family, mentors, guides, teachers who hold us to our magnificence and our light. And I don't want to beat this issue up, but it gets tougher when you're at the top. I work with some of the, very, very successful, 8, 9, 10 figure entrepreneurs who've done extremely well in their lives financially. And the higher you get, the lonelier it is. And the lonelier it is, the more you're left in your own shit, in your own pool of the stinkingness of your achievements. In Zen, we say your achievements are a stink. It's like a shit. And you want to hold them, but you don't want to get intoxicated by the smell of shit. All right? You want to move beyond. To do that, we got to be at our edge. And that's the courage of the next generation leader. The next generation leader is the one who has the courage to go, okay, I'm complacent. I've been complacent. I've not been at my edge. Let's go for it. Let's make it happen. And they risk the comfort of their safety to venture into the unknown of spirit. And that's my challenge and invitation to everyone, including myself here.
Beautiful. Then I will be quite some words, but let's give you my vector that I think is so bold and big that ultimately it scares ego, it crushes ego, and some people think it's too bold. And I really mean it. So my gut feeling, it's just a gut feeling, that when I die fully and fearlessly and surrounded by my loved ones, that I will see the seedlings of a planetary civilization. I will paraphrase some of them.
Oh.
Usually before a new paradigm is born, when we look at the last big civilizational collapses, and we're right in the middle of heading into one big cycle. Some say the biggest cycle in 500 years. That's also my sense. Before colonization, before the discovery of the Americas, before the Enlightenment, before capitalism, before AI, I think it's my sacred dharmic duty to think big and bold. And by the very nature, this is a very elitist endeavor because the power imbalances are so staggering that in my language, I don't think there will be another French Revolution, And I won't go into the there's a warmongering agenda out there, but I think we have a felt sense that the poorest of the poor, the most disenfranchised billions on the planet, most likely won't spark the next revolution that won't be televised. I think we can seed a new pathway on a whole nation state level. I don't think it will come from the centers and the biggest superpowers. New Zealand may be an example, maybe Costa Rica. there may be network states that, besides them, so far at least most of them that I see rather having a libertarian stance, that huge private land holdings will be a living playground of trying to test really Sangha, all whilst prototyping and testing what does it mean as a community, as a village, as a small town, maybe as a bioregion, to test how can we close the many loops, right, that we have artificially created in modern capitalism to honor the nature, the earth, the soil, the river, the water, the clouds, the plant kingdom, the animal kingdom, and us as humans as the dominant species. So what I imagine when I die, I mean, there's more optimistic and less optimistic scenarios, but that I see islands of sanity in a mainstream paradigm that's still caught up in fear, flight, fright, or like attack mode, basically, because all modern systems, all social media systems, all media is set up to have us kept in the amygdala. And you know yourself, and I reckon most of the listeners, that once you embark on a spiritual path of growth, including embodiment, including nervous system regulation, is like, how often do we get up caught in these systems that keep us trapped in the amygdala? And once we as entrepreneurs, since we're both talking from entrepreneur to entrepreneur, we have made sure that the basis is covered, and we discovered this like rich panopticon of possibilities that we can create, I think we all ultimately are called to serve really big and bold ideas. Anyhow, these were many words. In the context of your Sangha and what you want to birth onto this planet in your next life is, where was resonance? Maybe where do you disagree? And when people are still caught up in their big egomaniac behaviors, what's usually the vector? What do you throw at them, which is so much bigger than themselves, even if they're a centimillionaire or a billionaire? Because to birth a whole nation state in a new paradigm ask for a good chunk of billionaires, not just like one or two or three. So anyhow, I just wanted to go like as high as possible from a legacy perspective.
Yes.
Yeah. And ask you this systemic change question, like how present is this in your circles? Like how big and bold dare the people really to dream, and then ultimately to transform 3D material reality out there?
Beautiful, Alistair. I've had the privilege, the humble honor of working with very ultra high wealthy people, from many different dimensions, from entertainment to rock stars, prominent athletes to CEOs, founders, billionaires, CEOs, you name it. Here's the thing. When they come to me, usually they're not coming to take themselves to the next dimension of their growth, their expansion. They're usually coming with shit in their family life. They're usually coming stuff with their relationships are in a 911 stage or moving towards that rapidly. Stuff with their family life, their health, or a deep feeling of existential meaninglessness. Like I've got it all, the world says, but I don't have it all. And I would trade this for fulfillment and happiness. This is common. This is not something that's expressed. We don't edify this in the media. We only edify the bling and the achievements on the temporal plane, but we don't show the lack in the soul, the dissatisfaction, the emptiness, the hollowness in the soul. So people come to me not usually knowing why they're always there, but the common thread is an emptiness at a soul level, a disengagement from the vitality, the evolutionary life force. It's sort of been flat for a while, or there's no meaning, there's no spark. And why there's no spark? Because they haven't challenged themselves to the next level. They have no one to challenge them. Everyone around them, they're the ones that are challenging everyone else. They're the ones that are seeing the magnificence flowering, nourishing, coaching, mentoring the others. They don't have anyone. And the ones, when they try to find others, there's no one who operates at their level. They can find some spiritual guides, but who know nothing about business. They can find business guides who know nothing about consciousness and wisdom and relationship. So for me, the first thing that I start off with is, what's the frickin' problem in your life right now that's keeping you from the full fulfillment of joy, your inherent freedom, and the love that we're meant to experience? You see, my experience is through enlightenment is that we are love, we are freedom, and that the illusion of continuously seeking freedom, which is the masculine illusion, one day when I've checked off this, then I'll be free. The feminine illusion within us is one day when this happens, I'll fully be loved and be able to love fully. It's a postponement of our reality. So that's the first thing I point out. I take the leaders into a very powerful experience of self-realization, awakening, where they wake up and they go, I am the freedom I've been seeking. I am the love I'm seeking. And then you know what happens? In self-actualization, self-realization, I believe, to me, this sounds like a lot of people think it's up here. It's not, it's the base. And we can get there quickly, because here's the result. Symbiotic consciousness. To me, that's the essence of all the problems and the beauty of the world. All the problems we have all the resources, we've got all the money, we've got all the inventions, we got all the science. We can create utopia here on this planet in a short period of time. What we don't have is symbiotic consciousness. We have great theoreticians, we have think tanks that talk about what we need to do in the world and how to systemically create it. But have they gone through an awakening where they feel, I am one with that brother, that sister, I'm one with the Africans, I'm one with the Indians, I'm one with the Jews, I'm one with the Palestinians, I'm one with I'm one with all. I am that which is the symbiotic wholeness of all. This is a tacit experience that people have on plant medicines in a profound way, some of them. People have enlightenment experiences, their interconnectivity, their interconnectedness that's prior to any separation. It's a reality. This is not some pie in the sky altruistic vision. This is who we are. It's our human nature. Now, we've forgotten, it's been shrouded, it's been beat down, it's been distorted, it's been manipulated so that those in positions of power do not allow us to feel our symbiotic relationship and gain power from our constant, endless struggle and strife, as we see constantly going on in the world over and over and over again. To me, the leader who has the courage to step into the fire of self-awakening, is not awakening just for themselves. They're awakening for the whole. And we grow through stages. First, you gain me. You gain all the things that the me ego identity craves: success, significance, reputation, financial freedom, whatever, candy on your arm, you name it, whatever the ego wants. After it's achieved that, it's dissatisfied. It wants more. Now, to get more, it can go either more into the insanity that we see of craving, consumption that we have in the world, all the way going to the dark corridors of sex, power, and money and manipulation, going way down to try to get even more to fulfill the ego's voracious appetite. Every morning it wakes up and it says, you got to do more of this ego stuff. And we feel like a slave to it until you go, enough. I'm not that. I'm something deeper. This is a recognition. This is a holy moment. And those who step into that holy moment and go, okay, I'm ready for self-awakening. I'm ready to take my place in my symbiotic relationship with the whole. I'm not going to lose power. I'm not going to lose fame or significance. I let them go. And in my symbiotic awakening, my natural gifts will come even more on board. My brilliance, my resources, my teams, I can become even more of a potent force of change, systemic change, while enjoying my own life and while creating betterment for the whole. This is not a pipe dream. This is our evolution now. Either we take it as business leaders and we step towards that light, we step towards that potency of symbiotic support of the whole, or we self-corrupt and die. Even if we are not dead physically, we're going to be dead in the soul. Some of us are already dead in the soul. And the only way to resurrect it is to recognize your relationship with the whole, which brings a whole new life force, a whole new meaning, and a humbling of the ego and a potency of capacity.
Wow, this is a very interesting synchronicity in our relationship. So I want to first share where I agree. And then I want to explore a Gordian knot that you just shared, but I will share from a different angle. So where we agree is before shadow work, before embodiment, before transforming 3D reality, I agree from a Buddhist perspective or a Hindu perspective, it's truly about self-realization. And it took me 20 years up until I really had not just like this one-off short here and there, you know, like kind of Satori Kensho liberation moments, but really had the embodied sense of, okay, this part of my karmic journey is done. I had a very profound realization at age 37, actually in trauma therapy with a female master who built up like Pune 1 and 2, so the big Osho communities, and she did set up the frameworks, you know, for yeah, tens of thousands, much like you, for tens of thousands of people over many decades. So I had this felt deep realization, but for the first time in my body, like fully embodied, not out of my body. It was a very different type samadhi experience. The Gordian knot with whom I'm wrestling for over a decade, maybe my whole life, is how can it be that many, I don't want to say most, but at least many, the majority of people that are in positions of power, financial abundance, vastly privileged, like the two of us, so they are already in the top 1% in this lifetime, in this generation, they have a somewhat functional family relationship, whatever. So you would say they have it all. You know, these are the people portrayed in the media. These are the global superstars. These are the influencers. How can it be that many of those don't have the balls or maybe the emotional capacity to apprehend that from a global perspective, a planetary perspective, a civilization design perspective, truly the threshold to birth that planetary civilization and to get really bold and not just set up another set of a successful company, because you know now finally how you set up successful companies, but in that symbiotic
Yes.
relationship create systems that create more abundance for other people and for the other sentient beings and the soil and the earth, like regenerative business models. So this is really a Gordian knot with whom I'm struggling. Many still feel like they're kind of enlightened, truly. Many of them have had many of these enlightenment experiences, but they're still in a somewhat kindergarten, primary school, personal relationship of not wanting maybe to sense and feel also all the suffering and the pain and the collective doomsday that is waiting for us as a species. So this is not a specific question, but I hope you did get a felt sense of this
I get what
Gordian
you're saying.
knot. Yeah, curious on your thoughts.
Look, the ego has a voracious appetite, the sense of the I, the me. One of my old teachers said years ago, Satyen, just fulfill it. Go crazy with it. Try to feed your ego with all its needs with sex, power, and money. Go ahead. No, master, I want to transcend these. I want to transcend them. Okay, try transcending them. Okay, try transcending them for a year or two. But they're still there. All these desires for sex, power, and money, still there, still there. And this goes on and on and on. And he goes, look, until you fully fulfill those and you realize there's an end, there's a diminishing return, you're going to want to still crave it. You'll still crave it at a superficial level. Your ego will still crave it. So go for it. Go for all the sex. Go for all the power. Go for all the money, the accolades, the significance, the reputation, the stars, the lights, or whatever the hell it is. Go for it. And for most people, that's where they die. They go for it and they die. They achieve things, they die. But there's a few who are like, okay, I've gone for it. They've achieved, as we've shared, they're in privileged positions of power and influence and impact and resources. And then they go, this is where you get to go. This is where you get to ask yourself, If I keep going down this line of more and more expansion gain in that way, is it going to make me happier? You probably do it with your eyes closed at that stage, but it won't. It won't make you happy. Then your evolution. Our evolution goes in stages. First, it starts with me, and when you fulfill the me stage, that could take 10 years, 20, 50, 20 lifetimes, who knows? Then you start evolving and you recognize the law of diminishing return. This is not fulfilling anymore. Your heart starts to open, your being starts to open. You start to see that I can use my resources, my brilliance, and create more of a we. And wow, I'm part of a world. And you create even a higher level of structure that includes now we, win-win, omni-win, rather than self-gain. This is the next evolution. Now, you might go down there for the rest of your life and be happy and fulfilled, but sooner or later, some of us will go, even that has a diminishing return. Even that feels a little flat now, maybe after 10, 20 years of immersion. Then it becomes the third dimension, which is the all. You feel yourself as part of and responsible for global systemic transformation, change. Not everyone's there yet. Some of us still got to go ahead and grovel at the ego's demands. Some of us are elevated to the omni-win green meme where we're all taking care of each other and supportive. And then when you've done that enough and you're still bored and your soul's like crying for more, then you're ready for this initiation that we're working on with Alistair and our comrades and our colleagues. The ones who recognize what else is there to do in this life, except now with who we are and what we've cultivated and what we've achieved. Why can we not work on what else is there to? Everything else is boring. So go for the meta omni win, the meta world systemic change. That's my freaking challenge to you, especially those of you who've made it strong. That's the edge that I walk, and that's the edge a lot of us are walking. And those who have made the transition, jumped from the first to the second, and are ready to go from here to there, they're flying because the universe is supporting that right now. The universe is omni consciousness. The universe is supporting all leaders, and their businesses are flowering, their hearts are flowering, their relationships are flowering. Those stuck in just the win-win or the me, they're dying. They're dying. Their soul's dying and their body's catching up. Here we get a rejuvenation because we're tapped into the prana of all existence. What else? What other game is there? Everything else is freaking boring.
I love it. So I love the omni win. So let's start the next chapter like that, because I truly feel those who are still caught up in the diminishing returns for the ego, right? We need, I would say, part of our core audience is they may still be caught up in some of the diminishing returns for the ego. That's fine. But at least either the pain or the glory and the legacy you can leave behind if you're attracted by creating omni-win situations through your privileged position of power, money, influence, lever, portfolio, investment. Because I truly feel it. It's like I feel like we're somewhat the third to fourth generation with people that even just were apprehending the planetary dimension. I think the first generation were the classical hippies, right? The classical hippies, Buckminster Fuller.
Yes.
Let's say the second generation are the founders of Whole Foods, conscious capitalism, Integral Institute One, something like that. So maybe we're the third generation, because I truly feel that there's no official numbers, but my felt sense is we have 100 million, maybe a couple of 100 million each year that get initiated by sacred plant medicine. And hence, with all the problems that we have been covering, have the possibility of a true deep awakening experience in their life. And that's a pretty big proportion when we look at the planet in total, like how many people do ayahuasca or peyote or assisted, like psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, or all of that. So there's a new generation of leaders that have really done the profound work of awakening, inner healing, or shadow work, in order to then ask themselves, okay, what's the fucking biggest picture, boldest, badass version of myself if I truly want to leave a legacy? So these were many words. I want to now use a framework. It's called the Horizon 1, 2, 3 framework. And I reckon most of the listeners will be familiar with that, so we won't explain the framework. It's basically, what can you manifest in a year's time or 2 years' time, so a rather short time frame, a midterm time frame, let's say 3 to 5 years, and then we can either jump into 10 years or truly a legacy perspective. And I want to have this conversation in the context of both of us, meaning, what do you think you can realistically manifest in a short time frame, in a mid time frame, and when you leave the planet, you leave the body, you look behind, what's the boldest, most badass version of Satyen? And I will tie into that.
Thank you for the challenge to express this and to make it public. My mission is to enlighten, unify, and mobilize leaders for the higher purpose, for the higher good, with other brothers and sisters like you who are doing this in our own unique way on many dimensions: physical, mental, emotional, financial, societal, you name it. In a year, I see a new dimension. What we can achieve, what we will achieve, and what we are achieving now is a new level of Sangha. A Sangha of these people moving from me to we to the all. And I see a group of powerful, potent leaders working at this level with you and I and other colleagues, truly operating at this total dimension of being and potency, and evoking, supporting, loving, and keeping each other on the bar of systemic world change. I see that happening in a year. Absolutely. It's already happening. And in a year, it's going to be solid, grounded. In a, let's say, a 5-year frame, I see us supporting and initiating these type of potent leadership groups around the world, helping them on all dimensions of their being. These dimensions I talked about, the inner and outer. Why? Because the new leadership must take into account the depth of the inner equates to the expansion of the outer, and the service and the potency of the outer. I see that happening. In 10 years, with the potent circles that we play in, Alistair, we're going to change the world. We're going to turn it from the brink of self-destruction, and we're going to bring it into consciousness and betterment, and moving us towards a unity on this whole planet. 10 years, I absolutely guarantee it. I don't care what gloom and doom is out there. The universe never gives up on us. God never gives up on us. Our guides, our spiritual nature will not allow us to be crushed, not allow us to self-destruct underneath the weight of our ego and our separative forces. So I see us being I see us being true warrior sages, true holders of the world, true servant leaders. And I see us flourishing and awakening servant leaders around the world who are strong in their body, mind, and spirit, open in their heart, embracing in their values, and that we're not exactly the same, that we enjoy each other's uniquenesses and we flower and flourish in each other's uniquenesses. That's in 10 years. Business leaders are the ones that are either going to destroy the planet, because we got way more power than politicians and clergy and religions, way more in this generation than ever before. Or we're going to start opening the doors for a true utopia, a grounded utopia, a grounded omni-win place that works for all. This is the legacy that's in everyone's heart, whether it's in this lifetime, your 10th lifetime from now, or 100th lifetime from now. If you hop on it now, the ride is a lot more fun. If you delay the ride, the universe wants you to ride, and you're then staying in the shallow waters, then go ahead, take your time. But the world might burn around us. If we don't take our time and we all step into our dharma as it is now, fully on our edge, loved and supported by those like us, then we create magnificence here. And I don't even know what that looks like. With all the AI, robotics revolutions, quantum computing revolutions, these things with our consciousness will be servants to a whole world. And that's the world I see. That's the world I'm playing in. And join us. Join us.
Yeah, I just want to give that a little bit color, a different embodied experience, but very much in resonance. So yeah, I truly feel that encounter for the first time in 8 years calls in a joint collaboration for a global sangha. I think we were very clear on the specific ICP, so to say, the ideal customer profile. So checkbox on green on a 1 year timeline. For the 5 year timeline, I just wanted to give it more color. So I think in a 5 year timeline, there's very realistic setups of medium-sized network states. Again, the network states, and there's a bunch out them, many of them, if not most of them, are pretty libertarian only. So from a memetic perspective, I would like to challenge that and to create a
Yes.
ownership, governance structure, and a process design for these network states that are truly omni-win. Can be a couple of thousand acres, right? Let's say a mid-sized village, and really prototype what would it mean from a societal level, governmental level, ownership level. How do you stack these different regenerative business models into each other to really regenerate whole bioregions? I think that's a realistic 5 year network state scenario. In my scenario for 10 years, and I don't think I'm too optimistic, is that the outliers the of the panopticon of seemingly independent nations, there are some who are independent enough. Could be, for example, New Zealand, could be, for example, Costa Rica, but there are many other possibilities out there that people, again, full stack from governance, ownership structure, not going the usual central bank digital controlled currency route, right? That will disenfranchise even more the poorest of the poor, but to really create currency designs that are truly peer to peer, that are truly asset backed, and not an arbitrary bet like into the future, which is like basically fiat currency and central bank digital controlled currency. It just creates a liability into the future and issued privately, into the pockets and getting pocketed into the richest 0.1 over 1, 0.1%. Really, it's really just a tiny fraction of the people who profit from like central bank digital controlled currency. So peer-to-peer currencies. And I imagine also in 10 years, from a process design perspective, much like you shared, that there is a synthesis across lineages, across traditions, from monastic traditions to indigenous to pagan, to truly integrate deep divine feminine wisdom and deep divine masculine wisdom, but as a higher order synthesis, including also the shadow work, and not only the path of, let's say, awakening and ascension and leaving the body, but a fully embodied version of this, let's say, global sangha. And maybe final point, I truly believe in a 10-year cycle, maybe even a 5 year cycle, we will have a completely different understanding of ownership. And with that, I will close and hand over to you for some closing words. Me as Alistair, as I'm building a global portfolio, yes, I have a desire to own an own plot of land, actually aspiring to buy a pretty large scale finca here in Guatemala, where there's enough space for many dozens of my friends if they want to build a house. But in the deepest sense, I would like to be that on a higher mimetic order. I'd rather own a piece of an ownership structure that allows me and my family to have the rights to live for a certain amount of time on a beautiful plot of land. But maybe after that, we decide to spend a couple of years in Asia or in Europe. So a co-ownership of assets where there's just more freedom of expression than like needing to stay put on that beautiful one plot of land in Guatemala or you in Canada. So these were many words. I think maybe before we leave the conversation, is there something bigger, bolder, more daring, a dash scary, even for you, because even you sometimes get scary, but that's not part of the conversation, right? It's like, is there something bigger, bolder, and more badass than your 10-year version? If I remember rightly, so you're in your 60s, early
Yeah,
60s. So you still want to live
I'm
25,
50.
30, 40 years. You want to crash the 100 barrier. So is there something even bigger and bolder, kind of almost like as some like closing the circle of this conversation words?
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge and support all you've shared about your own vision. And however I can support that vision with you and lend you power, energy, and insight, it's my joy because you are a man who really is holding this omni consciousness and the multidimensionality, which I so enjoy, which I feel is needed to approach, the financial structures, the macroeconomics, right down to the human dynamics of reality. So thank you, brother. The biggest edge for me is not only the world getting along, but my biggest edge, biggest thing is how can we bring illumination and healing, as you said, the shadow work, the psycho-emotional work to the public, to the huge. I would love to see tens of thousands, millions of people go through enlightenment intensives, which is an awakening process. And I'd like to see millions and millions of leaders specifically, go through the inner consciousness work to clean up their shadow, to clean up any dynamics around sex, power, and money that are not aligned to spirit, that the ego has captured. And so, yes, awakening, healing, mobilization, enlightening, unifying, mobilizing our leaders in a really potent way. I think that's the big edge because who else is going to do it? And it scares the shit out of me because it's a lot of responsibility. And yet I know I'm equipped for it. And I know you're equipped for your gift, even though it's an edge. And I know everyone who's listening is equipped for an edge of service far, far beyond the game that you're playing now. Either we play it or we succumb to comfort. We succumb to whatever the hell we're succumbing to. Complacency, normalcy, just doing the things we used to do. I just let go of a multi-million-dollar company, which I do every 10 years. I let it go. I usually dismantle it. I usually give it up to the chagrin of my family and close friends that go, "What are you doing? Are you insane?" My teacher taught me this years ago. He says, once you have something so magnificent, so powerful like this, the moment you can do it with your eyes closed for years, you can wake up out of bed, it's time for your next edge. He would give everything up. And he was my inspiration. And every time I let go of good, like the book, I received great. I received the transcendent. I received more love and freedom than I could ever imagine, and a fulfillment in my soul that just keeps going, that can only be found in the leap of the edge of our gift. So my last words to everyone is, all of you who are the most potent, resourceful, capable of beings on the planet, it's our time to show we are not at the top, but we're at the bottom of the world as king, queen, servants of the whole. So rather than ascending, let's take the time now to descend into the rightful throne of being the omni-servant of existence and sentience.
Beautiful. I really have nothing to add. I wanted to end with a prayer. So may these words of Satyen be with you and inspire you to wake up, heal your shadows, and in my words, like show up and make a difference in this beautiful transition we find ourselves as humanity to birth that planetary civilization that we all know in our hearts as possible. Thank you so much, Satyen, for this deep conversation.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. Bless.